So you have the VCE Biology Exam coming up. Well, here are some tips on how to prepare, as well as to maximize your score on the final exam. Preparation can vary from person to person, so I'm going to go through the 3 stages that I went through. Stage 1, reviewing the content. Initially, I was at this stage because I hadn't looked at some of my notes for almost half a year, so I had to find out what I still knew and what I didn't know. And for this, I like to go through the study design, because most questions on the final exam will be based off these points. So treat each dot point as a question and see if you can answer them. And so this is like the first practice exam that I did. And if there's any areas of content that you're not sure with, then definitely make sure to ask your teacher or go back and look at your notes. And another way to go about it is to go online and watch some YouTube videos such as Khan Academy, which I found really helpful. Stage 2, apply our knowledge. So after I had a decent understanding of the content being taught, it was now time to get used to the exam-styled questions by doing practice exams. Now, you can do these untimed or just pick out certain questions, but the majority of exams that I did were under the exact conditions because this best prepares you for the exam experience. And just to make sure that you're getting the most out of each exam, here's what I recommend after doing each one. First, write down any questions you got wrong in a notebook, or you can write them on the back of the exam so you can review them later on. For any questions you don't understand, I would compile them into a document that I would ask my teacher or on online forums. And finally, look at the examiner's report and mimic their writing style, because there's always going to be those keywords or buzzwords that they use, and if you can replicate that, that will maximize your chances of doing well. Third and final stage, understanding the content. So this is where I've done a couple of practice exams and feel relatively confident with the content. But now the main struggle is understanding. So in other words, those application questions that ask you to apply your existing knowledge to new scenarios. And this is crucial if you're aiming for those top marks. And this ultimately just comes down to having a holistic understanding of the content as opposed to memorizing every single detail. So yes, you might get one multiple choice question on that specific thing found in the corner of your textbook, but that might only be 1 mark. And so some people might say, well, a mark is still a mark. And yes, that is true, but that is a prime example of the any benefit mindset, which means basically doing something when it has any sort of benefit, even if that benefit is really small. But the cost of this is our time. We might spend hours memorizing all these random facts where, realistically, we're lucky to be even tested on one of them. And this was a major mistake that I made when I did biology for the first time. So since then, I have shifted to the most benefit mindset, which basically means what should you do to get the most benefit? And the way to do this is through understanding. And yes, you've probably heard this 1,000 times, but this is because when we're taught a piece of content, we might be taught in a certain order. For example, A to B to C. But when an exam question puts a slight twist on it, for example, C to A to B, it might seem like a completely new thing. So that's why we need to be more flexible in the way that we revise. That way we are better prepared for these types of exam questions. Now, understanding is one of those wishy-washy concepts that is kind of thrown around. So I'm going to cover 3 practical ways to approach this. First, don't rewrite your notes. Instead, convert them into more visual forms. For example, mind maps, tables, flowcharts, tree diagrams, or annotated pictures. This allows you to see the connections between different concepts, and therefore understand them in an organized way. And second, if you have notes or flashcards, look at the wording and see if you can phrase what you have in a more concise or in a different way. And this will test how well you truly understand the concepts. And third, condense different perspectives into your notes. So I used to have a lot of handouts from our teacher in class, as well as notes from videos that I've watched, as well as from online study guides. And for a given topic, I would condense all these different perspectives into a set of refined notes or flashcards, if you like. So the point here is to get different perspectives on a topic and merge them into one. And this is like the story of the blind man and the elephant. So a group of blind men who had no clue what an elephant looked like tried to find out by touching it. But each man touches a different part, for example, the body, the trunk, the tusk, etc. And they describe the elephant based off their own perspective. And as you may have guessed, they all give completely different answers. Now, this is a bit of an extreme analogy, but the point remains. And that is when you combine 2 or more perspectives on a topic and merge them into one, you are able to gain a more holistic view on the topic and therefore fully understand it. Or in our example, understand what an elephant truly looks like. So that is how I prepare for biology exams. And if you want some tips and tricks to use in your actual test, I actually have a full video covering my general exam approach, which you can find linked above or below. But just to point out 2 important exam techniques. First, definitely use dot points because it makes your mark allocation much easier to see. And second, begin with the short answer and end with the multiple choice. And this is why I spent most of my reading time wrapping my head around and planning out my responses for those longer application-styled questions. But that is the video. Hope that was helpful and take care.